Recinto. I'm 17 years old and currently a senior here at Gunn High School. A little background information about myself. I was born in the Philippines. Both my parents are Filipino. I lived here in the United States, in Singapore, and back home in Manila. For the past 4 years, I spent representing the Philippines in international competitions as a rhythmic gymnast and as their national champion. I actually had to recently retire due to some serious health issues, but that's okay. So you just watched an exhibition that's pretty new. Sorry about all the little mess-ups, but it's pretty new. I plan on performing this exhibition at several other events, actually. So this is kind of like the first one. Yeah, so it touches on a sport I've spent the last 15 years of my life doing called rhythmic gymnastics. So rhythmic gymnastics is a sport that combines ballet, acrobatics, flexibility, and grace with apparatus handling. And it's always called one of the most beautiful and graceful sports of the Olympics. There are 5 types of apparatus, only 4 in use per cycle. The ribbon, the rope, the hoop, the ball, and the clubs. You just saw me do the ribbon, which is what rhythmic gymnastics, I guess, is most commonly known for. But it also combines with balances, jumps, flexibilities, and turns. I actually started out doing rhythmic gymnastics, which is the gymnastics most commonly known. I started out in Singapore and later transitioned into rhythmic gymnastics when I was about 8 years old and my family moved here to the United States. I've never done any other sport. I guess you could say I was just lucky enough to find something I had a deep passion for early on. So it's been pretty tough. I made a lot of sacrifices over the years. A big one is definitely time. At level 5, which is my first year competing, I was 8 years old and already spending 15 hours a week at practice. Every day after school, my mom would come pick me up from school, take me straight to Twister Sports Center over in Mountain View, and I would spend 4 or 5 hours there every day. And this is an 8-year-old. I was working in this little tiny room with about 10 other girls just because I loved doing it. But as the years increased, training also increased up until I got to train for about 30 to 40 hours a week. I didn't think it was very fair because I still had to go to school. The Russians and Ukrainians and all the other top athletes of the sport, they didn't really do anything but practice. They didn't have school. They didn't have social lives. They didn't have to really find that balance because all they did was train every day. But I still had to go to school because my parents valued education above all else. Every day I would get home about 9:15, start my homework, eat dinner, and probably stay up until 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning trying to finish all the homework that the gun teachers give me. Thanks a lot, guys. And so I didn't get a lot of sleep for that either. Actually, in sophomore year, though, I was lucky enough to be able to homeschool for a little bit. So I did half regular school, half homeschool. I would spend 2 or 3 hours here at Gunn and then go straight to the gym and practice then. And it was a little bit easier, but it was still pretty tough. The fact that I had to miss weeks at a time put a big impact on my academic performance. I never saw many of my friends. It was kind of hard. Because I was always at practice, my relationships with people were always affected and always under pressure, I guess. I was always busy. I always went to competitions. I was always practicing. So I missed out a lot on birthday parties, hangouts, sleepovers, dances, events. And I guess you could say I wasn't always the best friend just because I couldn't be there physically for my friends. I tried always being there for them with phone calls and text messages, but it was still pretty hard, You can't build a relationship off the media or off texting or phones. But I was always disappointed because I never got to see my friends, and I guess you could say along the way I lost a lot of friends. All of my friends really have made an impact on me, but I'm sad to say I haven't really talked to a lot of them over the years. And it wasn't just tough on me and my friends, but I would say it was especially tough on my family. They made a lot of sacrifices for me. It was really tough physically, emotionally, and financially for them. My dad actually doesn't live here anymore. He lives back home in the Philippines. Job opportunities here in the United States are kind of hard to come by, and he really wanted us to stay here in the United States so that we could have the opportunities we have today. So he moved back home in 2010 and works there now. I see him once every 2 or 3 months, and it's pretty difficult, but I try my best, and we try to keep in contact all the time. My mom's a lawyer, but when we moved over here to the United States, she actually stopped her practice because she wanted to be there for my brother and I. And so it was pretty difficult for our family, but we made it work. Rhythmic gymnastics is a very expensive sport too. Annually, equipment alone is about $200, $300, and you always had to match your leotards. And leotards in themselves are about 1,000 start value because they're handmade, custom designed, Swarovski crystals. And these are actually some of the designs that I used for my leotards over the years. These are all custom made, so it got pretty expensive. And I had to have 1 leotard per routine every year, so that was 4 new leotards every year, $1,000 each. All parents also had to pay for private lessons, actual practices, ballet lessons, leotards, hospital trips, etc. And as I earlier mentioned, I actually retired this year due to some serious health issues, specifically spinal problems. I have scoliosis, bulging discs, inflamed joints, and 2 cysts on either side of my SI joints. So I can barely walk right now, but I'm trying. And actually, in the spring of 2011, I spent a lot of time in the hospital, in and out, trying to figure out what was wrong with my back. I actually had multiple MRIs, CAT scans. I had to go on some really crazy steroids that actually ended up putting me back in the hospital. So that kind of backfired. And I had 2 cortisone injections into my back within a period of 3 months. So it was pretty tough on my back. And over the years, I've had my fair share of twisted ankles, fractured bones, switch slaughter, sore muscles. I have really weird looking feet and hands. And that's all because of gymnastics, just because I wanted to bend in abnormal ways that all the rhythmic gymnasts do. But the one thing that made everything worth it for me was being able to represent my country internationally. To be able to wear a flag on my sleeve, to be able to wear these really ugly, bright blue tracksuits with Philippines on the back. That was pretty cool. And to have the Philippines on next to my name every time I was printed in the media or whenever I was in announcements or anything, to have Philippines right next to my name was really, truly a huge honor for me. You know, not many people have that opportunity, and I never wanted to take that for granted. In 2010, I went to the Asian Games, Guangzhou Asian Games, also informally known as the Asian Olympics, where I met the most amazing people ever. You know, these people were the best athletes that each country in Asia had to offer, and to be able to spend time with them and to compete with them was really a huge honor for me. And I just met a lot of people who impacted my life and made me truly proud to be who I am. 2 people specifically who have made a large impact of my life. The first one is Sheila May Perez. It's pretty funny how we met, actually. I was in the cafeteria sitting alone because my coach didn't want to come with me. She was like, just go eat by yourself. So I was all alone in the cafeteria because I was the only gymnast from the Philippines at the time. And she actually just came down, set her tray in front of me, and I was like, hi, I'm Ate Sheila. And so Ate in Tagalog actually means older sister. So I called her Ate She from then on. And we just became really close friends. We just became like a really tight-knit group. And then the second is Nino Carog. He's also in the same sport as Ate Sheila. I call him Kuya Nin. Kuya means older brother. So they're in the same sport, and we just bonded over the span of that week. We became really close friends. We were all goofy. We were hanging out. Actually, Kuya Nino, he got me to play a shooting game in the arcade for 5 hours straight. I will never do that again for anyone. And so it was pretty funny. And he also made me play Dota with him, which is kind of like World of Warcraft. and he would always yell at me in Tagalog, and I couldn't translate that fast. So I always eventually got our team killed. No one wanted me to play on their team anymore. These two people made so many sacrifices to be at the Asian Games. You know, they grew up together. They actually, they grew up together. They both dropped out of high school to pursue their careers in diving. And they sacrificed so much to be there. Based off what I knew of my situation and of their situation, I knew they were far worse. They were also living in the training centers at the time, and the training center was not very good living situations. But I just saw how amazing they were and how hard they worked to be where they were. To be able to go to the Asian Games for a week and represent our country. They gave up so much just to be there. It wasn't until I actually got home and Googled them that I figured out I had spent the last 2 weeks with these two Philippine athletic legends. Sheila Perez, she is a 3-time Olympian and a 5-time gold medalist at the Southeast Asian Games. Kuya Nino is a 3-time gold medalist at the Southeast Asian Games as well. And I didn't actually know this because they didn't tell me. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised that they felt they were secure enough within themselves to not tell everyone about their accomplishments. But then again, they're like 26 or something. But they were very humble, and I just learned a lot from them. Another thing I learned was to be grateful for my family. My parents really gave up a lot for me to be there, and they truly pushed me and made me work hard to be where I am. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have had any of the opportunities I have today. If it wasn't for my mom pushing me harder and harder every day and telling me, no, you can't quit, I wouldn't have had these opportunities. They just made a huge impact in my life, and I'm truly grateful for all the things they sacrificed for me. Especially my dad was living in the Philippines now and not being able to see him every day. Another favorite part of gymnastics of mine was the fans. It was always really cool to come over to the general area after competitions and see all these little girls and people with their programs and with their cameras waiting to take a picture and have you sign their autographs. It was really touching to know that my performance had actually, impacted someone enough that they would want a picture with me. And I always thought it was really cool. And there were these little girls that were always super scared and timid and weren't really sure if they wanted to come up to me, but they came up to me anyway, and it was fun. I like taking pictures of them. But the older generation of fans, they're kind of weird. I've actually had 2 marriage proposals. Kind of awkward. One of them came up to me after second day of competition with some flowers and asked me to marry him. And I was like, no. And then I ran off to another corner of the gym because I wanted to avoid him as much as possible. And I've had a couple people follow me around the games. And I always try to lose them, but it's pretty, I guess it's flattering, but at the same time, really creepy. Because of everything I experienced with the Philippines, I really wanted to give back somehow. So in 2008, a fellow Gunn student, Erica Gigampan, and we decided to create a nonprofit organization called the Sunlight Foundation. We actually collect school supplies and donations that we give to the Ita, or indigenous children of the Philippines. They really have nothing, and we wanted to give them the best basic school supplies necessary to have a proper education. So we've had that project for a while. We provided school supplies for hundreds of students over the years, and it's really gratifying to see these pictures and how happy they look on them. Last year, I was also invited to be part of the United Nations Youth Envoy to the Philippines, as well as this year. And so it's really a big honor to be able to, be part of the country in that way. I was also invited to attend the United Nations Human Trafficking Conference last year, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of issues in the world, and so I'd really like to go into that in the future. Pictures. So I've had so many experiences from gymnastics that I would never trade in the world. I would never say that, I wish I hadn't done any of this to be able to go to school like normally and not cry every couple weeks and just break down because of all the stress. But in the end, I learned so much. I got to travel the world. I got to meet these incredible people, meet world champions. It was a very incredible experience. But the 3 things I learned the most were how to make sacrifices, how to take risks, and how to be grateful for everything. Sacrifice is a huge part of life. You can't have everything. You have to make decisions that will ultimately make you lose something. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You really have to decide what is most important to you as a person and just go for it. That's also where taking risks come in. There's nothing that says that you are going to make it. You have to take risks and think in the end that everything's going to be okay. And I've taken so many risks over the past couple of years. I've fallen flat on my face so many times. But the risks really did make everything worthwhile because of all the opportunities I have, all the experiences, and all the people I've met who've made an impact on my life. And the last thing is to be grateful. A lot of the time we don't thank the people in our lives for everything they've done for us. I know I haven't thanked my parents enough. I haven't thanked my friends enough. And so I'd really like to thank them some more because without them, none of what I've been able to do would have been impossible. Without them pushing me, without them being there for me, it wouldn't have been possible. And when you think about the living situations of other people, you can't help but think of how lucky you are to be where you are right now. Palo Alto, it's an incredible area to live in, and we seem to take that for granted. And so really the main important thing that I got out of everything was how to be grateful for everything you've had. Thank you.